beaucoup. Je m'excuse, je ne parle pas français bien, mais I'll speak in English, but thank you so much for coming. This is an exciting moment for me because just try to imagine, probably before many of you were born, there are a bunch of young filmmakers running around the streets of Montreal, and this is the result, this film. So there'll be a lot of locations that you'll see that maybe will be familiar to you. And one thing, the film was made to be commercial. It never was, but maybe it'll be commercial now with this new rendition of the film. But it was kind of ahead of its time. It had a very strong woman main character, and it was also about sex workers. And you know, those are things that people talk a little bit more about now. So again, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoy the film. We'll talk afterwards. Steve Lack is here. I don't know if you mentioned this.
I forgot, sorry.
That's okay. Steve Lack. Steve was a part of our film group, and he did a film called Montreal, Maine. We did that together. And also Steve did a film called Rubber Gun, which Canadian International Pictures is also restoring and going to be distributing those films as well. So Steve will come up afterwards. Did anybody here see Montreal, Maine? Have you? Okay, so a few of you have. So you know who Steve is. I mean, he's unforgettable, and he hasn't changed a bit. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed the film. This will be the first time I've seen it in a long time, and it's been restored, so it's probably going to look pretty good. Thank you for coming. Thanks again. Stephen Lack is going to interview me, and he's going to embarrass me, I guarantee you, so you won't want to miss a second of this. You know, I can't believe I made that movie. It doesn't, I don't do anything like that now, and I didn't do it before, but it kind of holds up. I mean, you laughed at some of the right parts and some of the, you know. But it looked good. These guys at Canadian International Film did a great job of restoring it. And Ivar, I haven't seen him in 40 years, but he did a good job shooting it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lack. So actually, I don't know who we want to start with, you, Stephen, or if anybody has any questions in the audience.
Yeah, let's pump the audience for questions.
Yeah.
Just wondering, for the actor who played Johnny Silver, was their hair, is that their own natural hair, or was it intended to be drawn like that?
You know, I think it was his natural hair. I know you laughed at that. It was his house we were filming in, and he owned a theater.
Yes.
Does anybody know him? Or
It's Bernie.
Oh, yeah. Was it?
Bernie of the Dollar Cinema?
That's him. Yeah.
Is that him?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, he was there. I mean, it's a long time ago. Does that still exist?
No, it's
As of 2 months ago, no.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess he's still around.
Should be.
Okay, I'll have to look him up. Was his hair still look like that?
He's got less of it now.
Yeah, like a lot of us.
Well, yeah, the whole thing was hair in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know if the movie played outside of Canada, like on 42nd Street? Like in
It probably did. It was, do you know the Toxic Avenger or Lloyd Kaufman or Troma?
Yeah.
So Lloyd was distributing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they played it in, you know, I guess in Europe and in Asia and in the city. I don't know exactly what they did with it.
And what do you think about the restoration, what they did, Canadian International Pictures?
Canadian International Pictures? Oh, it looks fantastic. It really does. Troma did a transfer and they just did a kind of a quickie and it wasn't really very good. But these guys are, they love kind of out-of-the-way films. They're making them into Blu-rays, and apparently there's a lot of collectors, people collect Blu-rays of two kinds of genres. One, like Montreal, Maine, and Rubber Gun, which were kind of artsy films. And then this was an exploitation film. I mean, there's kind of gratuitous sex in it. And I'll just tell you my story a little bit, is that I made Montreal, Maine, and it turned out to be the most successful film I ever made. But at the time I didn't know that. I thought, hey, it didn't make me very much money. It didn't, get me in the Academy Awards. So I'm going to learn how to make commercial, real, maybe more Hollywood, more standard films. So I did that for practice. But when it's exploitation, there's sex and violence, and it's supposed to make money based on that. Well, it never, it made some money, but it never really, helped me make my next film. And it took me like 30 years to realize that that's really not what I want to do. So I've made a number of docu-fiction films lately. I don't know where I was going with that. Any other questions? Yes?
Where does the title come from?
Well, that's interesting. I was at Cinémathèque, and you guys probably know Ivan Reitman, who did Ghostbusters. He was there at the same time. And John Dunning, who was the head of Cinémathèque, really liked Ivan. Ivan made a film, another film that these guys at Canadian International Pictures like, is House on the Lake. Is that right? The title of it?
With Brenda Vaccaro?
Yes, with Brenda Vaccaro, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was this naive guy, and so Ivan named it. It was Ivan's idea, Ivan Reitman.
Yeah, the original name was Cindy.
Yeah, that's right. It was Cindy. And I don't know. Did he make a good title? Is that a good title?
We like it.
In French, is Cindy la Justicière.
What's that?
Cindy la Justicière.
Cindy la Justice.
Justicière, c'est ça.
How do you pronounce it?
La Justicière.
La Justice.
Justicière.
Oui.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know who André Pelletier is? I think she's been in a number of Canadian films.
I think her father was also an ambassador to the UN or to France.
Right. And you probably know Alan Moyle from Rubber Gun and Pump Up the Volume and
Outrageous.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets killed in Joe. Gets
What's
laid
that?
in East End Hustle.
Oh, it's just sorry. I love that movie, Joe. It's great.
Excuse me?
I was just saying I love that movie, Joe.
Joe, you do? Oh, really?
It's great.
Did you see me in it? Did you notice that I was in it?
No.
I was production unit manager on that film,
Oh, shit.
and so it was a union film, but they could get bit parts. So when Joe goes up to some kid and says, "Get a haircut," he's got an afro. That was me. And actually, that was Susan Sarandon's, maybe not her first film, but she was in the film, and she made her own dress, and she was an unknown actress, and Peter Boyle was unknown at the time too.
It's a great picture, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions out there? I bet there are. Yes.
So, how did this came about exactly? Were there people that you knew you were going to be working with on this film, or did you have to reach out? Did you have to audition a bunch of people, or did you already know, like, okay, this is going to be who I'll be working with on this next film?
Okay, well that's a good question, because Steve and I worked on Montreal, Maine, and it was and then so I decided I wanted to make another film that again was an exploitation film to learn how to make a standard Hollywood movie. So there was an organization called Vehicule. It was an arts organization. It had a big space, and we auditioned for the actors. And again, it was an audition. There's no money. We didn't have money to pay anybody, and we probably had 300 people line up to audition for the film. So it was all, auditions and favors and hustle, basically. I mean, it wasn't like I'm not a person to take advantage of people, but on the other hand, people who want to make a film and don't have any other options, that's what we did. So we just built it from scratch. So we edited Montreal, Maine at Cinémathèque. Again, Cinémathèque was an independent company in Montreal, and they were trying to be nice to young filmmakers, so they were going to let us edit there. But they didn't trust us. So they would lock us in the building, and when they closed the building, and we would edit all night, and then they would come and open the doors in the daytime. and they didn't want us to see it. And when you think about it, it's pretty dangerous. If building caught on fire, we'd be like out of luck. But there was a woman, Marcia Cuel. Does anybody know that name? Yeah, you know that. Yeah, she was she ran the Canadian Genie. Is it the Genie Awards?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so she ran that for a while, and she was working at Cinémathèque, and she was kind of she would come at like 10 o'clock and unlock the building and let us go out and get some Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then she'd let us back in. But it was a magical time. I just want to say, when we had a screening at the film board, this is a film, it's not finished. We had no idea what, we didn't know what we had. We literally had to turn in Coke bottles to get enough money to take the bus up to the NFB, National Film Board, Bozo and I, to screen it. And it was miraculous because people really liked it. You know, and suddenly we had something really good in our hands. But of course, that's not this film.
I remember in the old days, Alan would get on a bike with a knapsack full of the reels that he was going to edit at Cineplex.
Wow.
And bicycle out there and then come back the next day.
So do you have any incisive questions to ask Stephen? 'Cause I think Stephen had mixed feelings about the film.
Well, you know, it's an exploitation film and it's, you know, gratuitous sexuality, but, you know, and by today's standards, it's mild compared to the violence and intimidation and cruelty that we impose on our subjects.
It was as good as I could do, Stephen.
What's that? Yeah, no, I'm grateful that you didn't go any further. You tried.
Me too, I
know.
was cringing back there. But,
No, I think it had some great moments, and I also see some of your work, like the scene where Johnny puts on his clothes. And
I know, we were just saying that, yeah.
Yeah.
Where she puts on her clothes, so things repeat. But
Yeah.
that scene where she kills Miguel at the end, that was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did that little hop. I like that. Hard to keep a dead man dead.
My English is very bad, so I try my best. How it was difficult to show, to shot new sequence, new shot. It was new scenes. Yeah, it was difficult or
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cringe about it. I've been cringing about that for 30 years. You know, so, you know, to ask them to take their clothes off and be totally naked. And
I think you did a great job with that love scene with Moyle and Andre Pelletier. That's a pretty good scene. It looks like it's not going to go all the way, and then it goes all the way, and they break off sated, and it's.
And then they laugh. That was
yeah. Believe me, that's how it was.
Yeah.
Are you originally from Montreal?
No, I went to McGill. So in that sense, I was in Montreal. Before I was a filmmaker, you know, studied science at McGill. But I came from Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah, so I was trying to get away from home, so that's where
That's the Montreal connection.
Yes, yeah. And Stephen and I met through McGill. In fact, we're having an informal reunion tomorrow of McGill of the 60s or 70s or something like that. So,
Well, that actually leads into a question of my own. The Montreal icons that you decided to include in the film, not being originally from Montreal. But one of the odder ones that I want to ask about is why the sewing workshop? Because Montreal used to be full of all these little sewing workshops, and now they're pretty much all gone. Why did you choose to include that? That was so cool to see.
yeah. You know, I lived in a loft on the Main. It's now, it was Cookie's Main Lunch, and it's now Bagels, etc., or something like that.
Bagel, etc. Or
Yeah.
the bagel, yeah.
Well, you know, and upstairs there was a sweatshop, you know, a factory. Why? Yeah, it looked good. It was probably, you know, look, it was just kind of that was the idea of the scene, was that she'd be like a worker and the boss would take advantage of her. In fact, that's one thing that I don't know if I'm puffing up incorrectly, but it was a strong woman. I mean, there weren't many films with strong women in them, so it was an exploitation film, and it was my kind of fantasies, but I don't know, maybe it was a little ahead of its time in that way, and that it was, had a strong woman.
Yeah, it's a precursor to Jackie Brown.
And the other thing is, I've run across in New York is kind of sex workers uniting. I don't know if there's I don't know. Did it portray sex workers in a good way, or was that just like, I mean, maybe it was just a vehicle for me to have a little bit of sex in the film. I don't know.
Well, I know a couple of sex workers, and they don't stop having sex, even when they're having a cigarette. It's on their minds, and it's also very casual. I mean, they could, I don't know, they're wild. I miss them.
All right, well, listen, yes.
I think that you portray the sex workers, I think, very well for the time, and maybe now, but you were definitely ahead of your time.
Mm-hmm.
As a sex worker.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
Being shown on film.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was on 42nd Street, and nobody was shooting anything at that time.
You were on 42nd Street?
I'm sorry?
You lived,
No, I spent a lot of time in New York in my youth.
Okay.
But Montreal was a very well-known place where Americans would come. We had a lot of brothels. As a matter of fact, that stretch on Sewell between Roy and Pine was a brothel. There were apartments attached, one next to the other. It was one of the very early brothels. In the red light district, it was part of it.
Yes.
When I moved into the apartment above Sophie's candy store, there are doors that connect from one apartment to the other. They were blocked off. Very large doors, almost the size that you could actually roll things in and out. So yeah, Montreal is known to have been, a red light district since the teens, or maybe even before, right?
Yeah.
Seagram's,
Do you know about the padlock law?
the padlock law. It sounds familiar. I probably
And anyone here know about that?
Loi du cabinet.
Hmm?
Yeah, la loi du cabinet. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
It was a law that, it'll tell you a story, all right. Okay, so when you're in the plateau or any of those areas, and you've got the large arches that lead into a courtyard, there used to be double doors to those, and that's where the brothels were, the whorehouses. And they would raid the whorehouses regularly, and they would take everyone downtown that was caught in flagrant delicto or whatever, and they would take their names down, and then the whorehouse would send a bail bondsman, and they would all be let out, and they would then put a padlock on one of the two doors that led into the courtyard, which was a signal that the whorehouse had been raided recently, and as a result, you could go there without the threat of being busted. You see? And there was a clerk in the whatever municipal office it was that had the names of all the people that were busted and released on bail. Okay? Does anyone know who that clerk was?
Jean Drapeau?
Jean Drapeau. That is correct. That man gets the Buick. Okay? Jean Drapeau took that list of names and became the longest running elected official in North America in the 20th century. Just in case you want to know where guilt goes, or, the only other people in that power are the priests. I think John might have stopped when his son got popped on the mountain, but anyway, there we go. A little bit of history. Vive la Montréal. Any others?
Yes.
What was the rating of the movie back in the 70s?
The rating.
Yes.
Oh, it must have been X at least.
No, I doubt it. Huh? But I don't know.
I found the Montreal Star. You could look at the archives online, but I think it was 18 years here in Montreal. But the US, I don't know.
So would 18 years be like R or X? I don't think it was X, right?
No.
Yeah.
18 ans. 18.
18.
18.
Where'd you get that?
So, I don't know. I don't know where I found that. I have it 5-6 years, and I didn't know that movie before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and, I saw that movie recently too.
So this is a great festival. It seems like it's been going on for a long time. When we made this film, there were no festivals, I don't think, in Montreal. But there's Nouveau Cinema and this one. Do you guys attend this festival regularly, or? Yeah.
27 years.
First time? First time? They're generally kind of fantastic films, right? They're more, it's not like a art house. But were you here the first night? I think that the guy who was in Moonstruck was here. Is he giving us a telling?
Yeah, he's telling you.
Okay, yeah, it's been going on. Listen, thank you so much for coming. And
now, Cindy's life is on the line. There's nowhere she can run to, nowhere she can hide. East End Hustle.